We are now streaming. 1 minute till broadcast, 30 seconds till title sequence.
Good afternoon, everyone. If the chamber will be in order. It is August 4th, 1:00 p.m. I'd like to officially call the work session of the Durham City Council to order in order to faithfully conduct the business of the people of Durham. Let me welcome all of you who are with us in chamber, to my honorable colleagues, to Her Honor the Mayor in her absence, Councilmember Johnson in her absence, to all those who are watching in here and on whatever device you may be watching on outside of the chamber. Good to be with you all. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Mayor O'Neill has requested an excused absence for today. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Middleton.
I'm here.
Councilmember Caballero.
Here.
Councilmember Freeman.
Present.
Councilmember Holsey-Hyman.
Present.
Councilmember Johnson has also requested an excused absence for today, and Councilmember Williams.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. At this time, I'm going to yield to my honorable colleagues for any announcements that they may have. Colleagues? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I just wanted to lift up Councilmember Holsey-Hyman and getting the resolution around school added to the agenda, just acknowledging, making sure that our residents are aware and take a look at that resolution. It's a pretty good for the first try. So thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Colleagues, anyone else?
Thank you. I too echo. I'm excited, especially being a former educator. Looking forward to, hopefully adopting this resolution, taking that stand. Also, I want to thank my colleagues that I see in the audience from the small business community. Looking forward to hearing your voice and your concerns today. And, yep, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Williams. Councilmember Hyman.
Yes. Hello, colleagues. Again, I just want to say that I had an awesome time at National Night Out. I don't know if we can do that every day. I'm only kidding. But it was, it was just really nice to be in different diverse populations, diverse places throughout Durham, and just seeing everybody come together with not only just the police, but just everybody together. So I would love the media to do some more coverage on things like that, positivity that we're doing in Durham. So again, I enjoyed it, and I look forward to the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? All right, thank you, colleagues, for those very good announcements. At this time, I'm going to recognize, in our city manager's absence, Deputy City Manager Keith Chadwell for any priority items from the city manager's office.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Mayor Pro Tem and members of council, the city manager has no priority items for today's agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Deputy City Manager. At this time, I'm going to also recognize the city attorney's office for any priority items.
Good afternoon, Mayor Pro Tem Middleton and council members. Deputy City Attorney Fred Lamar sitting in for the City Attorney Kim Rayberg. There are no priority items for the City Attorney's office.
Thank you, Councilor, and welcome to the dais. Madam Clerk, I'd like to recognize you for any priority items.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. I would like to introduce our newest staff person in the city clerk's office, so I'd like to take a moment of personal privilege, if I may. Okay, I'd like to introduce Katrina Wood. Please stand up. And if you would like to say, may she say a few words?
Absolutely.
Okay, right at the microphone. Hold this.
Good afternoon. Hello. I'm recently come on as an administrative technician for City Clerk's office under Ashley White and, of course, Diana, City Clerk. And I've been with the City of Durham under the Parks and Rec Department for 3.5 years, and was really looking forward to working closely with documents and to support the searching for and the public's access to them. So I look forward to this position and all that it implies, and I've enjoyed getting a chance to individuals and stakeholders who will come to us, and look forward to serving you further. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and welcome to the clerk's office. Madam Clerk, is that all you had?
Yes, sir, that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you. At this time, I will read into record all of the administrative consent items found on our printed agenda. Administrative consent items, City Clerk's Office. Number 1, approval of City Council minutes. Item number 2, Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission appointments. Item number 3, Durham Historic Preservation Commission appointments under departmental items. Budget and Management Services Department. Item number 4, Maintenance Support for Performance Management System. Under City Manager's Office, item number 5, U.S. Department of Transportation, Federal Aviation Administration Airport Improvement Grant for Raleigh-Durham International Airport. Item number 6, of Russia's sister city. Under Community Development Department, item number 7, Ashton Place Apartments, additional funding request. Item number 8, contract for the provision of non-congregate emergency shelter support services with Urban Ministries. Item number 9, contract with families moving forward for the provision of rapid rehousing services. Item number 10, contract with Housing for New Hope, Inc. for the provision of rapid rehousing services. Item number 11, First Amendment to Loan Agreement with J.J. Henderson Seniors, LLC for the Durham Housing Authority J.J. Henderson Seniors Apartments Phase 1A development. Item number 12, Hardy Street Apartments additional funding request. Under the Department of Water Management, item 13, amendment number 2 to the Parkwood Area Lift Station Consolidation Professional Engineering Services Contract. Item number 14, award of construction to J.F. Wilkerson Contracting Company, Inc. for the Lakewood Avenue Sewer Replacement Project. Under the Police Department, item number 15, amendment to the United States Marshals Service, USMS, 2022 Fugitive Apprehension Task Force Memorandum of Understanding, Grant Project Ordinance number 15834. Item number 16, amendment to the United States Marshals Service, USMS, 2023 Fugitive Apprehension Task Force Memorandum of Understanding, Grant Project Ordinance number 15977. Under the Technology Solutions Department, item number 17, contract with ESO Solutions, Inc. for a records management system. Under presentations to be heard today in the City County Planning Department, item number 18, comprehensive plan update that is slated for a 30-minute presentation. Under the Public Works Department, item number 19, ST-314C, pavement condition study that is slated for 20 minutes. Item number 20, SW77, sidewalk asset management plan. That presentation is slated for 20 minutes. Under public hearings, from the City County Planning Department, item number 21, amendment to zoning district RU-MD development plan, Harriet's Place 2. Item number 22, consolidated annexation, courtyards at Farrington Road. Item number 23, consolidated annexation, Griffin Residential Tract. Under Citizens Matters to be heard at 1 p.m. With us virtually will be Ayinde Simon and Casey Oster. We'll start with our virtual folk, and then here in chamber with us, we have David Bradway, Langston Alexander, and Nicole Thompson. And under supplemental items, Elizabeth Rainwater, Nick Johnson, Seth Gross as well. Let me read that again for Citizens Matters to be heard at 1. We will start with Ayinde Simon, Casey Oster. We will then have Elizabeth Rainwater, Nick Johnson, Seth Gross. We will then have Langston Alexander, David Bradway, Nicole Thompson, in that order. Under supplemental items from the City Council, item number 27, we've already heard several council members allude to this item, resolution supporting safe and protective measures to foster healthy learning environments in Durham schools. And at that time, I'll yield to Councilmember Hyman for any words she may have on this issue. That ends the reading of our agenda today. Mr. Manager, I didn't hear any pulled items from consent. Did you?
I did not, sir.
All right, then. With that, then, we will proceed with our words from our residents, our citizens' matters to be heard at 1 p.m. And at this time, Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask if you would make Ayinde Simon hearable here in chamber. And I welcome Ayinde, and you have 3 minutes if you can hear me.
Yes, how you doing? My name is Ayinde Simon. Am I able to share my screen, or is this just audio?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said, Ayinde.
I said, am I able to share my screen, or is this just audio?
No, unfortunately not. It's just audio in this this platform. Forgive me. You have 3 minutes.
Okay.
Welcome.
No worries. Thank you, Councilman. My name is Ayinde Simon from the HBCU Smart Cities Challenge. I'm talking today to hope to have Durham's participation in this challenge. The HBCU Smart Cities Challenge is a form of challenge asking HBCUs to build a smart city application to improve their community. We work alongside city stakeholders, tech partners, and HBCUs to create real solutions to real problems. Our focus as my company, Pathway OZ, is in opportunity zones in HBCU communities. We focus on tech and economic ecosystems in those areas. Just to give a quick overview of the challenge, we kick off in September with a virtual event with the Smart City 101, where we're talking with cities to submit 2 problems to our problem pool for students to build a smart city application. As of now, we've talked with cities like Greensboro, Winston-Salem. We have universities like Shaw University, Morgan State, Cottrell College, Barber Scotia, who are going to be participating in this event. What we're doing is evaluating applications from students over 4 months. We're working with tech partners like Helium Foundation, as well as G3 ICT to build inclusive communities. What our project looks to do is really center HBCU talent as problem solvers in their own communities. Definitely looking to connect with anyone leading smart city initiatives on city council and speak to them about Durham's participation. We're kicking off in September 13th with our first event, Smart Cities 101, starting with the problem, where we construct problem statements with cities such as Durham. We're focused on tier 2, tier 3 cities, usually under 500,000 population. But we're looking forward to having Durham take part in this challenge and looking forward to connect with anyone on council who's excited to hear more and see how we can actually get you guys participating.
And thank you for.
That's it for me.
Were you done?
Yes, I'm done, sorry.
Absolutely. No, thank you very much. It was very important comments on a very important initiative. Thank you so much. At this time, Madam Clerk, if you would make Casey Oster hearable here in chamber. Casey, good afternoon. Can you hear me? Casey Oster, can you hear me? It appears our microphone's hot. Casey Oster, can you hear me? She appears muted now. Casey, if you can unmute yourself. There you go. Can you hear me, Casey?
Can you hear me?
I can. Welcome. Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us. You have 3 minutes.
All right. Well, I'll just start with that. We're so grateful for you to give us your time. We basically wanted to chat with the increasing aggressive level of behavior from the homeless population downtown. This isn't just general panhandling that we're seeing. It's an urban area. It's the same problems as most areas as far as panhandling goes, and we're used to it. But over the past couple years, mostly starting in 2019, but definitely escalating throughout the pandemic, some of the homeless population have just been increasingly aggressive to the point of threatening staff members and threatening visitors to the downtown area and making it generally really unsafe to be downtown. And that's certainly not what we want when we're kind of, trying to work on a really lively downtown, especially with the social district on the way. So, we aren't exactly sure of the issues. We met with the mayor last week. We're not sure what can be done specifically. I know some things are in the works, but basically we just want to make sure that everyone is aware that we are doing our best to be our own police for this situation in a way where we're spending money on security guys, even at 6 p.m. on a Monday evening, and that's sometimes still not early enough. We are basically, our staff has just, been threatened and been like lots of violent acts. Betsy Rainwater, who is physically there, can talk a little bit more about her specific events within the past couple weeks. But even as recently as Tuesday, we had a gentleman that was not the Michael Williams, who I'm sure we'll hear about from other people, but came in, threatened to punch our security doorman, threw a beer across the road. Just generally like the level of they're very brazen, and it makes us concerned for the safety of the visitors to downtown and our staff members when it's already more difficult enough to find staff, in addition to just making sure that like business and the lively downtown scene does well. I think that we're in a progressive enough town that we need to ensure that there are steps to be taken to help with the mental the mental aspect and the addiction aspect of all of this, but also just that criminals who are doing violent acts and aggressive, threatening things are not just wasting the police's time to pick them up and being left right out on the street. We don't love calling the police on anyone, but we just want to make sure that when criminals do criminal things, that there is some repercussion, and it's not just allowing the homeless population to be even more brazen. Malachi Noon, who's the owner here, brought this to a city council member, Jillian Johnson, 2 years ago, and his concerns were not acted on.
Casey, thank you so much for being with us and for your comments today. Friends, that ends those that I have in queue on our virtual platform, and now I'll turn my attention to here inside the chamber and welcome Elizabeth Rainwater to the podium. Hello, how are you? If you would come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you for being with us.
Okay, thank you for hearing us. My name is Elizabeth Rainwater, and I am the general manager at Bull McCabe's. I'm just going to give you specific examples of things that we have battled in the last 3 years, more importantly. This is not about the general homeless population. It's a group of I would say about 10 very aggressive panhandlers. Walking up to customers who are trying to eat, harassing them, taking the food off their plates, smoking and ashing on their food, throwing the food and drinks off of their tables, pulling their pants down and exposing their genitalia to kids and women. When somebody opens a wallet or purse to give them money, takes it out of their hands, grabs the contents of the bag, throws it back at them, and walks away. Walk up to cars at intersections and in parking lots, hold the driver's door shut and bang on the window. We can't let our staff...
I'm very sorry, Ms. Rainwater.
Oh, it's okay. We can't let our staff take their trash out at night because we have to walk through an alley to get to a dumpster. We're concerned about them being attacked, which leads to problems like this past Sunday night. Someone took every bag of trash out, spread it across the back of our building, which of course attracts rodents, bugs, and then came back and told us he would clean it up if we paid him. Someone held a woman's car door shut, wouldn't let her get to her kids until she paid him. Someone held a teenager at our ATM, told him he would knife him if he didn't get money out fast enough. Doing drugs on our patio in the middle of the day. Stand behind our staff's cars at night so they can't leave. I have camera footage of a gentleman swinging a punch at me. Get people to buy them food and then try to return it to us for cash. And we don't know what to do. It wasn't this bad when we had the bike cops and the officers driving through at night. But my understanding is, at best, the police force is staffed at 55%. So the DA has made it adamantly clear that she will not prosecute any of these crimes. So we're kind of at a loss. We don't want to lose our customers. Every time these things happen, I never see those customers again. They never step foot in our business again. So we're losing revenue for the city, and the city is losing the interest of people coming into Durham. So that was it.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rainwater, for being with us today. At this time, I'm going to welcome Nick Johnson to the podium. Is Nick here? All right. Moving on to Seth Gross. Good afternoon and welcome. If you state your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes. Thank you for being with us.
Good afternoon. My name is Seth Gross. I'm with two restaurants downtown, Bull City Burger and Brewery, Pompieri Pizza, 107 City Hall Plaza, right across the street here. So as the city continues to grow, we've got a real concern with the aggressive panhandlers. This issue is rapidly getting out of control. 11 years ago when we opened, it was a common thing, but generally nice folks. You'd give them some water. We always want to help people, but what we have seen in the transition is a small subset of people who are aggressive, dangerous, and something bad is going to happen soon. As one example, we know the notorious Michael Williams. Everyone knows about him downtown. I've watched him drop his pants, urinate on our patio in full of a full patio of guests, exposing himself at the same time. He's come into the restaurant to grab napkins to clean himself after going to the bathroom outside. He demands money from people. He sits at the tables trying to be unnoticed. When we ask him to leave, he gets aggressive. Of course, this is directly impacting our revenue and the city's revenue. Our ability to pay fair wages is really putting a black eye on the city. I'll give you another specific incident. This past Saturday, we had an incident with another aggressive panhandler. He has been banned, trespassed, all the things we've been told to do. He still came into the restaurant because a guest said they would buy him food. A manager approached the gentleman and asked him to politely leave. The panhandler got aggressive, grabbed a mason jar of iced tea, dumped it on the table, a glass jar, held it up like he was going to throw it at the manager. The manager quickly grabbed the glass, and the aggressive panhandler punched him and struck him. We called the police. We have filed all of the appropriate things, but the man actually said, go call the police. It doesn't matter. They're not going to do anything. These people know that the city is really, the DA, whoever it is, we don't have a lot of power to really do things. Now, we know the solution is not to lock everybody up. These people need addiction help, mental health. We get that, but we don't have a better alternative. So instead, we're allowing people to commit crimes. That doesn't seem right. We're creating an unsafe city. We're creating opportunities for our hourly employees who walk home, have cash in their pockets. We're putting them in a dangerous situation to walk to their cars. Multiple people come into our restaurants on a regular basis asking for water, money, making change, all those things. They often go into the bathroom. Some of the restaurants, they'll lock themselves in the bathroom. In our case, we don't have a lock because it's multi-use, but they will go in there and then completely bathe themselves in the sink, leave the bathroom a mess. We had a gentleman lock himself in the stall recently who just smoked cigarettes in the bathroom of the restaurant. We are powerless to do anything. It's really getting out of control. The public health department here has expressed a concern about a growing rat population in Durham. And these homeless people are tearing bags open out of the dumpsters, dumping food on the ground. We come in the morning to clean it up, and they're contributing to that population as well. Please, I'm concerned about the safety of our city and the perspective people are taking about Durham when they go back home.
Seth, thank you very much for being with us today and for your comments. At this time, I'm going to turn to the residents and citizens that signed up here to speak. I have 3 cards, and the first card I have is Mr. Langston Alexander, who I'm going to welcome to the podium. Thank you for being with us. If you'll state your name and address for the record, you'll have 3 minutes. We appreciate you being here.
Hi, thank you, council members. Thank you, council members, for having me. My name is Langston Alexander. My address is 322 Clark Street. I'm going to talk a little bit today about bike safety in Durham. So I've been a Durham resident for about 2 years now, and from the first day, I fell completely in love with Durham. There's a vibrancy and a diversity to Durham that I've seen in few other places. There's so much to love here, but for such a welcoming place, Durham streets are seemingly built to exclude all but those who drive a car. I've experienced this firsthand by commuting from my neighborhood of Duke Park to school at Duke University. Every day I have to contend with cars whipping by me at 40 miles per hour as I make my way across town. The danger Durham roads pose to all those who use them was made shockingly clear last month when Matt Simpson was tragically killed at the intersection of the Ellerby Creek Trail and Guess Road. At a silent bike ride, memorializing his life, I was told a few years ago Guess Road was considered for a road diet, a process that narrows the width of a road, ceding space to pedestrians and slowing car speeds. The road diet was abandoned because NCDOT found it would slow wait times at the Guess and Broad Street intersection by seconds. I don't know if changing the configuration of Guess Road would have saved Matt's life, but I know it would have made that crossing safer for the tens of thousands of people that use the Ellerby Creek Trail every year. As you will hear next in more detail from David Bradshaw, this problem isn't unique. It happened on Guess Road, it's happening right now on Irwin, and it will happen on another road in the future. NCDOT prioritizes car convenience over all other factors, including safety, equity, climate considerations. But that doesn't mean Durham has to do the same. I ask that the mayor's office, this council, and the transportation department create a plan addressing North Carolina Department of Transportation's lack of concern for the safety of Durham residents. The next time a repaving project arises, how will the city respond when NCDOT says no to a bike or bus lane or pedestrian infrastructure? I don't think shrugging our shoulders or pointing fingers is good enough. And to achieve Durham's stated goal of 0 roadway fatalities, we must do more. At very least, we must be able to take advantage of these low-hanging fruit opportunities to make our roads safer. But you are not in this alone. Organizations like Bike Durham and the thousands of residents who bike, walk, and ride transit are here to support this work. Call on us, and as a community, we can make Durham streets safer for everyone who uses them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for being with us. At this time, I'm going to ask David Bradway, who's in the chamber, if he would approach. Good afternoon. Thank you for being with us. If you would state your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes. Again, thank you for being with us.
Hi, thank you, Council. My name is David Bradway. I live at 1001 Rose Hill in Old West Durham. So I'm a Duke employee, father, bike commuter, and a member of the Bike Durham group that Langston talked about. I'm a confident, strong cyclist. I biked here. I prefer to get around on foot and on wheels. Earlier this summer, I even participated in a photo shoot with the transit department, so I'm a model of biking and walking in Durham. But after suffering so many project delays, outright cancellations, weak proposals, and recent road violence, even I'm questioning some of my choices and preferences in the city. I have a 6-year-old who I biked with every day to E.K. Poe Elementary this past school year. And before that, I had her on my bike for several years, getting to the daycare, and that was across Irwin Road. In a few years, I might be taking that Ellerby Creek Trail with her to get her to middle school at Brogden. And is that going to be a safe place for me to take her, or without me even? I'm kind of scared for her to be biking and walking in Durham without me at this point. But can something be done to make a network of safe streets and paths that we can walk and bike through the city? So Durham does have a Vision Zero commitment to zero traffic deaths and serious injuries. But the state statistics show in 2020, there were 36 deaths in Durham County across the year, and 1 every 10 days. Irwin Road in particular has had 367 crashes in the last 5 years. That's every 5 days a crash is occurring. 33 of those involved pedestrians and cyclists. So to get toward Vision Zero, we have to make changes, and we have an opportunity every time a road is considered for repaving, restriping, other improvements like projects that have been long delayed, improvements along Hillendale, Fulton, Marine Road. All of these are going to get improved sidewalks and bike lanes, and we need to connect them to places people want to go. Imagine if the state highway system was built, one segment at a time. You need to be able to get from one place to another by a connected network, not just a lane here and there for one block whenever they dig up a street for water main work. So I'd ask you to consider a bold vision, working with private landowners, with the state, with the transportation department. With the increased staffing that they're going to get this year, I heard there'll be 6 new positions within transportation. So there's an opportunity really to focus on this. And I know Durham has a lot of problems that you're working to address, but it can't be a zero-sum game. We can improve in many ways at once. We can work to address, some of the violence and gentrification and other issues. So I'd ask that this be one of the things that we focus on. And thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your time. I'm sure that 6-year-old is very excited to have a dad that's a famous model. And finally, friends, Nicole Thompson. Good to see you. You know the routine.
Remind me again. No. Hello, my name is Nicole Thompson. I'm the President and CEO of Downtown Durham Incorporated. Thank you for this time to speak before you today. Okay, you've heard some harrowing things from our downtown business owners. To the business owners, thank you for coming forward today, taking time away from running your business to share your stories with the council. This is a difficult topic to discuss, especially in a community like Durham, where we care so much for those in our community who are struggling. We don't want to create an environment where those who have the least are unwelcome. Many of us want to give to others when we're able, and nobody wants to discourage that. But right now, we're not talking about folks who ask others for money, who accept $1 when we can spare it, and a not this time when we can't. We're talking today about a small but growing number of individuals who threaten, intimidate, verbally abuse, and physically assault people who work, live, and visit downtown. These are repeat offenders who have been banned from businesses and arrested repeatedly, but who are returned to our streets to verbally and physically abuse others again and again. The lack of consequences and our inability to deal effectively with these infractions has emboldened these bad actors. Worse, we are seeing some panhandlers who used to be respectful and law-abiding starting to push the envelope and become more aggressive as they see criminal behavior in others go unchecked. We know this from the information we receive from our ambassadors. Again, right now, this is a small group of individuals, but the effect they are having on the health, safety, and vibrancy of our downtown is not small. It is critical that we take steps now to prevent this problem from growing. The small local businesses that have been part of our downtown for years are run by our neighbors and our friends. They invested in downtown when others would not. They've been battered by the economic devastation brought on by COVID, and they are struggling to get back on their feet. During COVID, it was these businesses and their employees who continued to show up in downtown when office workers and others retreated. They are crucial to the ecosystem of downtown and to the entire Durham community. Downtown's unique shops and world-class restaurants attract larger businesses and developments that create jobs of all skill levels and pay the taxes that fund our collective priorities. We cannot allow our downtown businesses to be destroyed by the criminal behavior of a few. Customers have too many choices in the region for us to think they will return to a place where they feel unsafe. Some of us remember a time when Durham's downtown was a ghost town. We've all worked too hard to return to those days when downtown was perceived as a scary place and therefore nobody wanted to visit. A city's downtown is its heart. It is the one place where a cross-section of the community can come and does come together to sit in its plazas and parks, to hear buskers, to see street artists, to protest, to skate and scooter and bike ride, to share a meal or a drink, to have a business meeting, to just people watch, or to just be a community. A city's downtown is its jewel, and I think we all agree that Durham's downtown is a jewel not just for Durham, but the entire region. A downtown that many want to replicate, but a jewel needs to be protected, cherished, and loved. We are committed to maintaining this jewel, and we ask that this council work with us to implement targeted, proactive solutions to resolve this issue as quickly as possible, beginning with these 4 initiatives that can be undertaken immediately. Extend and expand Operation Bright Eyes. This program puts DPD officers in downtown on bikes or on foot from 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. on Fridays and Saturdays.
Nicole?
Yes, that this program be
Nicole,
expanded.
I'm sorry, the 3 minutes is up. Is it possible that you can submit those, the rest of the comments in writing, the initiatives you just alluded to us? And
Can
we'll
I
be
just
soon-
mention the other, just really quick?
Very quickly, very quickly.
And extend the HEART program, investigate pilot programs to employ hospitality ambassadors. We are looking at that, Downtown Durham Incorporated. And then finally, making sure that we know the ordinances that are in place and enforcing those ordinances. We are willing to work with the city and our downtown businesses to make a change, and we have to. We have to before this gets out of hand. Thank you for your time.
No, thank you so much for being here. And I'd still ask if you don't mind submitting that to us in writing so we can take a further look at the initiatives you just see if the clerk gets a copy of that.
Will do, yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
I appreciate you. Colleagues, that ends all of our comments from public, from residents and citizens. And before I move on with the rest of the agenda, I want to see if any of my colleagues want to respond to anything that we've heard from residents or citizens. Councilmember Williams.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to first acknowledge our advocates that are here speaking on behalf of what should be needs for our entire city. So thank you all for speaking on the bike lanes, and we are working on that. I know it's not happening as fast, but we are. In regards to my colleagues in the small business arena, we've been working on this matter as well. There is a schedule, well, there's a coordination of meeting time between the county, the DA's office, and the city to address this. We understand that we can't arrest our way out of this. I personally have experienced, the giving money and it been thrown and hitting me in the face, so I know exactly what some of you all are meaning. But I do want you to know that this council hears you. This council will respond. The city cannot do it alone, and I will say the hard truth, sometimes we are going to have to involuntarily provide support that is a safe haven for some individuals. And that is just a reality. So I want you to know that we are coordinating a meeting across all of the jurisdictions to provide more of a holistic approach to supporting this matter. But thank you for being here, and I keep pressing us until we see results. Same. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any colleagues, anyone else? Councilmember Hyman.
I also want to give my support in terms of the panhandling issue. I have also been a victim. I frequent, Walgreens on Fayetteville Street, and I actually had went into my car and left the door open, and one of them came and tried to get my bag out the car. So this is important, and I also support us trying to look at strategies to handle this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Anyone else? Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I also would like to offer sincere concern and acknowledgement around the panhandling. It's been an issue for decades, and I know that there used to be a program, Pennies for Change, just encouraging folks not to give money and to try and find other ways to kind of address this. I think that also needs to be incorporated into this conversation, acknowledging that there were solutions in the past that worked, and I think they've been deviated from. I would also add that for the transportation conversation, the Vision Zero work has to happen, and I am completely overwhelmed with how much funding has been kind of directed away from pedestrian and biking. So it is a conversation. I know we'll be talking about sidewalks today, and so I look forward to having another conversation with Bike Durham to figure out what the strategy looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Freeman. Colleagues, anyone else? All right, thank you so much. I'll just quickly say, I sit on the board of DDI, and I know this is an issue that we've been discussing. One of the things that I'm heartened by is how in tune our business owners are with Durham's values, and almost to a person, I heard it echoed and intoned that we can't arrest our way out of this. This is not primarily a law enforcement issue, but when that line is crossed, we certainly need to respond to that in ways. My colleagues on the board of DDI know that in the past life, I actually worked with New York's largest business improvement district, Grand Central Partnership, Bryant Park Restoration Corporation, and 34th Street Partnership in Midtown Manhattan. One of the things we worked on was coming up with ways to address homeless residents and citizens of New York without turning it into primarily a law enforcement response. So I know that we've had conversations about looking at best practices from around the country, what other bids are doing, business improvement districts are doing around the country. We hear very well the potential impact on the economic vitality of our city and our downtown corridor. But I also hear the humanity and concern that we get this right in dealing with the issue as well. And I'll just associate myself with everything that my colleagues have said. It's a serious issue, but it's one that we will deal particularly with according to our values as a city while addressing it head on. So I look forward to continuing to be part of those conversations with DDI and with my colleagues as well. And this has got to be cross-disciplinary as well, from City Hall to the county to the courts as well. So we look forward to those conversations. But thank you all so much for being with us. And colleagues, thank you for your comments. With that, I'm going to turn to our presentations. We have some really excellent and really important presentations to be heard. And the first one is the City County Planning Department Comprehensive Plan Update. And I'm going to, it says Scott Whiteman, but yeah, I was going to say, you look much more impressive than Scott Whiteman, so Lisa, good to see you. I'll yield to you.
He can hear you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Lisa Miller, Principal Planner with the Durham City County Planning Department. We're here to give you an update on the Durham Comprehensive Plan. It's been a multi-year project, as many of you are aware. And I will just mention we've got my director, Sarah Young, Scott Whiteman, as you mentioned, manager for our team, and my coworker, Carl Kolazna, are here as well, if there are questions that you all have after our presentation. So we know some of you all have been very involved in, on the council throughout this project. Some of you have joined the council, and we wanted to make sure that we give kind of a balance of information about what has happened, just kind of an overview, what it is we're talking about, make sure we make clear this is a comprehensive land use plan, and then also give a chance to share updates around the work and get some direction and feedback from you all if there are any things that we need to kind of redirect or take into consideration as we're pulling together a final or a full draft of the plan and getting close to the end of this process. So this is what we're going to share with you all today. We are not asking for any formal action, essentially just trying to get that direction as we're closing the timeline of the full project. So as Councilmember Williams has been very helpful in helping us know how important it is to talk about this is a land use plan primarily, right? So the comprehensive plan is a plan for how we're going to use land in our community. It sets a vision. It is not law, but it is guidance. This is something that has an impact on things that are broader than just land use, and so it's an opportunity for us to highlight, to daylight, and address a lot of the things that are important to our residents that land use can have some impact on, whether it is a very strong impact or a partial impact, and will require us working together with city and county staff and organizations within the community to get at those broader goals that reach beyond strict land use. We did want to mention that for this plan, we're using the Triangle J Council of Governments projections for a 2050 population that is estimating 130,000 additional people in Durham County, which would mean accommodating approximately 60,000 new housing units before 2050. This plan is a unique opportunity for us to look at Durham, both the city and the county as a whole, and work towards the priorities of all of our Durham residents and our elected officials at once. Many of our operations are split between the city and county, but with this plan and with our joint department, we can look at the whole picture together. So this slide lists the main components of the plan that will be included in the full draft. I'll go through a couple of slides just briefly describing each of the components. And before I do so, this is the big picture timeline for the project. We've been working on this since November of 2019, and we hope to begin the adoption process for this plan this winter. So to lay the foundation for the comprehensive plan and develop community goals and objectives, we started our work with an open-ended engagement format, allowing residents to describe the Durham that they want to see in the future. As we started this, the city had just developed the Equitable Community Engagement Blueprint. We've been learning to work towards more equitable engagement through this process and ensuring that we put resources towards residents who've not been reached in the past, while also trying to improve communication and engagement with our residents across the community. As we are all very aware, COVID hit our community in early 2020. Through this time, we've been trying to work on what equitable engagement looks like during a time that's really challenging for our residents by using an iterative kind of feedback loop every time that we talk to residents and get input on things. We're also asking, how did this work for you and how can we do better as we come back to you to talk again? As we were developing the plan components, we've worked to incorporate different staff and resident perspectives into the work of both creating and refining those drafts, rather than developing them in isolation by our staff team, which is something that in the past has been common practice in both our profession and our department. So the first component of this work was focused on hearing from residents to develop a foundational vision for the plan. The community goals and objectives were adopted by the City Council and the County Commission in June of last year. This document also included 4 guiding values that were values that our residents shared very clearly in our first phases of engagement. Those are things that they're looking for from us as local government, and were around equity, accountability, accessibility, and resident well-being. In addition, it had 9 big picture goal statements and 33 objectives that detail that vision further. The next component is our place type map, which is where our vision gets applied geographically. The map shows place types for each parcel in Durham, and it replaces our existing future land use map and is a future land use plan. The map is not legally binding. It does not change a property owner's rights under the existing zoning, but it shows where our community wants to develop houses, stores, businesses, schools, where to protect farmland and green space, and how all of those things should work together and people can move between those. The place type guide is a key or a legend for understanding that place type map. The guide lists 20 different place types. Some of these describe places that exist in our community now that are unlikely to change significantly in the next 20 years. Some of the places describe the kinds of places that we heard from residents through the goals and objectives process that they want to see that maybe don't exist in our community now. Both the draft map and guide were shared with residents in the fall and winter of this past year. Both of those are being revised in response to resident input now. The next component of the plan are the policies, which are written recommendations in the plan that will guide future decision-making and work towards our community's vision in the goals and objectives. In final form, the policies will also include action items that help identify discrete steps to work towards making those policies a reality. Revisions to incorporate community input on the policies after the last couple of months of engagement on those is also underway now. The final piece of the plan is the implementation framework. This will build on actions to work towards the policies and include information on who needs to be involved with or responsible for different pieces of the work. Once implementation begins, we will also be putting together a report card that is looking at how we're doing towards working towards our adopted community goals and objectives. So with that, I want to highlight just a few areas on the map and on the policies, key highlights from what we're doing with this plan and how those are a little bit different from our past comprehensive plan. So there's a list here, and I'm just going to highlight a couple of these in a little bit more detail. So one of those that we want to highlight is establishing the transit opportunity place type. So this is mapped out along existing and planned bus routes in order to add housing and access to jobs in places that are served well by transit. As many of you know, our previous plan really just aligned land use and transportation in the compact neighborhoods which were along the planned light rail alignment. This plan includes smaller scale transit opportunity areas where high-frequency public transit stops exist or are planned. They're generally placed at intersections of streets or in places where older shopping centers provide an opportunity to redevelop and become places that better serve residents no matter their transportation mode. We've also established a new place type called mixed residential neighborhoods. These are generally going to be applied on greenfield sites within the urban growth boundary with a mix of different housing types. One of the things that we've seen historically in our community is a large development of a single type of housing, often single-family housing. So this, again, in response to what we heard from residents through the process of developing the goals and objectives, residents want to see communities, neighborhoods of different people, different family styles, different living situations, all be able to be accommodated together. So the mixed residential neighborhood is intending to bring different people together within one new neighborhood. And the final piece from the key ideas of the map that I'll highlight are the established residential place types. These are places where we have existing neighborhoods where we don't anticipate really big change to occur. We do know that we need to allow more residents to live within our existing neighborhoods that are connected to both transportation options and jobs and services. These are places where we anticipate allowing infill of slightly greater densities that help us focus housing within our existing city footprint rather than just outward sprawl. We know that the way that these places incorporate infill in neighborhoods needs to be done very sensitively, and it needs to focus on creating greater access to housing for residents who need it most. And our policies and action items work together with the place types on the map to try and accomplish that. So that's a good transition into some key ideas from the policies. So one of those is to focus more growth within the existing city footprint. The vision that was adopted in the last plan resulted in extending infrastructure like water and sewer further out and extending the city limits. The proposed policies guide us to make better use of our existing infrastructure by channeling development to places in the community that have the infrastructure in place to serve it, which means encouraging context-sensitive infill development and discouraging only outward growth. This allows us to do more to protect the rural and natural character of Durham County and to protect environmental lands, watersheds, and drinking water sources. And this is another place where we have a connection between the tools on the map and the policies is very clear. Another thing I'll highlight is we heard really clearly from residents they want better access to the things they need daily. You've heard folks talking about wanting to be able to walk and bike safely throughout our community today. We know that driving from your home to anything that you need to get is not the way that residents want to live. And so one of the things that we've looked at is how to find places within the community that we can have more of the daily needs that people need access to present closer to neighborhoods. So we've done that through the grouping of different place types on the map, creating both mixed-use areas like the transit opportunity areas and the mixed-use neighborhood, as well as having policies around creating complete communities, providing better transportation options to those needed services, and ensuring that non-residential uses that are near neighborhoods are focused on the uses that residents most need. We also have policies around how we coordinate transit investment and housing placement. This is also strongly tied to the map and where the transit opportunity area place type was located along transit routes. But we also have policies around prioritizing low-cost housing along transit routes so that these residents that need low-cost housing have good transportation options that helps to reduce their overall household cost burden. Speaking of affordability, we know that we need more housing in general, but we know that we need to focus on prioritizing access to housing with folks with the lowest incomes and the greatest need as well. So I will just talk through two examples quickly of how the policies in the map work together. The first here is showing a transit opportunity area. This is the area of north of Duke Regional at North Roxborough and Carver. You'll see the purple is the transit opportunity area. This is an area that's served by multiple Go Durham bus routes with additional transit service proposed in the county transit plan. It's an area that's mostly developed already with some suburban style office and commercial and a lot of surface parking. The transit opportunity place type would allow us to add housing close to jobs and daily needs with access to transit that already has city services and infrastructure in place. The second example I want to share is at the edge of the city and county. This is along Hamlin Road and Glen Road in eastern Durham County. Just to describe the map quickly, the black line is the proposed urban growth boundary, which is the limit of where the city would annex in the future. The red lined area with the hatching in it is what we call a future growth area. That is a designation that means this is an area that could develop in the future. However, we don't currently have infrastructure in place to serve it appropriately. So we want to make sure to coordinate infrastructure planning and funding and development with the actual development occurring. So this is one of the areas where we're proposing some reduction in the urban growth boundary from the existing comprehensive plan. The area just east of the new proposed urban growth boundary, which is that black line, is within the Falls Lake critical area and would be fairly difficult to serve with city sewer. Removing this from the urban growth boundary helps us meet environmental protection goals and reduces the need for additional public infrastructure extending outwards. The area to the west on Hamlin Road is in a proposed future growth area, that area outlined in red. Although this area could be served by city sewer, it's currently outside the minimum response time of the nearest city fire station. So development should not occur until a new fire station is funded. The place types that are shown in the colors underneath the future growth area hatching are what we envision to be in place once the area has the infrastructure in place to support development. In this area, those place types include mixed residential, established residential, neighborhood services, community institution, and recreation open space. So with that, I just wanted to share what's next for the plan, and then I'll close out my presentation. So we're currently working on revising drafts of the map, the guide, and the policies based on input we've heard from the community and from staff over the last few months. We'll also be working to couple policies with action items. We'll continue to develop an implementation framework so that we can hit the ground running with trying to start making this a reality as the plan is adopted. Once all of those plan pieces have been revised, we'll be pulling all of it together in a full draft plan that we'll share with the community one more time before beginning the public hearing and adoption process for the new plan. So with that, I'll just come back to this slide. Again, we're not requesting any formal action, but do request any feedback or guidance that you all have as we're trying to pull together the full plan that we can make sure is incorporated as we move forward. Thank you so much.
Lisa, thank you so much for a really excellent presentation. I chair the Joint City-County Planning Commission, so I've had plenty of opportunity to hear a bunch of iterations of this plan. There's never a time I hear it where I'm not inspired by something or something isn't stoked in me or I relearned something. So thank you so much for this great presentation. I'm going to yield now and ask if any of my colleagues have any questions or comments. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. Good to see you again, Lisa. And 2 days in a row. So I encourage folks to actually go listen to the very lively conversation that happened yesterday at JCCPC. There was a lot of conversation specifically around the future urban growth boundary, I guess is what it is called technically, and the conversation on where we would be potentially pulling that back, which is about 13 square miles, if I'm not mistaken. And I really appreciate the presentation. I think that the work that's getting done here is so vitally important, and I hope that our residents really, some of this can be a little bit over our heads, but I feel like our planning staff does a really good job trying to make it as for lay people as easy as possible. And I appreciate the presentation. I do have a couple of questions and actually maybe a little bit of like a wish list. I very much appreciate the map that's showing the Roxborough Carver Street area. Thinking about actually coming further down, that entire area is a dead zone when we think about a bus line, even down into downtown. I have made that very clear to transit staff. The Museum of Life and Science has asked for a bus stop. Right now, if you want to go to the Museum of Life and Science, you have to walk either to Roxborough. You have to pretty much walk to Roxborough. That is unacceptable. And so if we're talking about transit opportunities, I can see that entire purple that's in the map coming all the way down to downtown. You can't get a bus. My entire part of the city that is very close to downtown is basically, instead of a food desert, it's a bus desert. I don't live very far from downtown. And so I think that there's probably a lot of residents in this kind of transit opportunity zone. So I appreciate that that's included. I appreciate that that place type is included, and I look forward to our conversations. The other thing I had a question around was you were talking about implementation and goals, and we are going to have, I was thinking about like our sustainability roadmap, and now we had that dashboard so we could clearly show the steps that we are taking for the community. I feel like that has been an excellent tool, and so I hope that we're thinking about something similar that is easy to navigate and easy to understand. And then I think yesterday, it's not just the future land use map that's going away, it's the entire tiered system that's going away, correct? Okay, so that's going to be something that I think our residents and folks will have to get used to. Is that's a very different way of orienting ourselves. I think it's a great step forward. And then the last thing, and I said this yesterday, I'm going to reiterate it. We're going to have to, I like our place type, if we're really going to think about not sprawl. I get the intention that we're saying about bringing in our boundaries, essentially, that what we have right now is not serving us. It's really creating a far-flung city and is having an impact on our rural Durham County residents. As we are having that conversation, we really need to think about everything across the city has to be denser, period. It can't be that we're going to take land out and then not allow people to build more densely, which I don't think is what we're doing right now. A duplex, quite frankly, a neighborhood full of duplexes is not dense enough for my taste. I think we need a mix of what's in there, and I know some of it is, our hands are tied at the state level, and so the folks who sit on our legislative committee, really thinking about being able to do triplexes and quads by right throughout the city is going to be something that is incredibly important, and all other types of what we call middle missing housing. And I don't know how we get there necessarily, but I'm just stating that it's got to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Caballero. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and thank you, Councilmember Caballero, for highlighting our very lively discussion in Train City County. I would echo all of the things that Councilmember Caballero said as well. Just acknowledging that just one little differentiation around the concern was raised after yesterday's meeting, and I do want to make sure that it's noted that if our preserved areas are only around the waterways, that's a concern if it doesn't give a boundary enough. And then just acknowledging that there are other areas that do need to preserve, whether they're historic or have some significance to the city. I think it's important to note that. And as I mentioned yesterday around the age, just acknowledging how our stormwater systems, I think those are the areas we do want to re-encourage development or redevelopment in some aspects, and then also some infrastructure conversations. And so how we intersect I acknowledge we have a housing, transportation, infrastructure, like all of these plans have to work together towards that comprehensive plan. And I don't know right now if that's clear. And so I know if it's not clear for me as a council member who's been involved for far longer than 2019, it's probably not for just regular citizens who've moved here last year. I do appreciate Councilmember Caballero mentioning the transportation deserts. I would like to say that there are some very strong transportation areas that still need to be addressed. And so those hubs that are not in place, and the pedestrian and walkability or bikeability around that. Like if we're not, I guess, including the roadway kind of comprehensive aspects of this. So the request that we're making to developers, we need to really have a better plan around what we need to do as a city so that they're not all doing the stoplights and the striping or the sidewalk. So, yeah. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Sorry. Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? Councilmember Williams.
Yeah, thank you. Lisa, it's always great to see you. We've had quite the dynamic relationship working through this comprehensive land use plan. And I put emphasis on that because I was so confused. And every time I get a chance, I apologize for being so aggressive the first time. I was like, what the heck is this? This is a chair on 3 legs. So, however, I do think that we still need to, I keep hearing residents want, and I want to be clear. The way I define residents in Durham is you have residents who live in a house. You know, it's like pedestrian. You're a pedestrian when you're walking. You're a car driver when you're driving a car. Our small businesses are residents too, and I'd like to have that input. And I put in the conversation yesterday, I'm ready to entertain the idea of, land use districts when it comes to uptown, downtown, midtown, the arts district, the historic district, the tobacco district. And I think that supports being able to be more specific around not only a 15-minute city or in Durham a 10-minute city, but just also having a clear vision on our economic growth and tying that in with our environmental preservation and our housing plan. And then I think we can have more solutions as we contribute to this affordability crisis that we have. Also, I was going to ask, I know that this map, it'll be a guiding star for us, right? Once it's complete, this plan. It's just not where we say, this is where we want, for example, we were talking about bike lanes earlier. Like, this is how we, create our vessels throughout the city. We create streets this way, or we create, like we have Magnum as a wide one-way street and signs are flying in folks' house. Is this not where we say, we would like two-way traffic here, or is that transportation something totally different? I'm asking because it's in the land,
Yeah, those two things are absolutely interrelated. The way that we look at how we want the character of places to be and what the land use and transportation patterns are. The actual plans for what roadways will look like and what transportation options there are, those are transportation's purview, which is why we're working with them and the map of both existing and proposed transit, as well as thinking about where there are changes to our transportation system. Certainly, as we look at the transit opportunity areas and several of the other place types, we describe kind of what we want to see in terms of mobility and some of the ways that putting structures on the ground can help reinforce places that are more walkable, that are more bikeable, that are more accessible by transit, because they are creating a scale of development that's not focused on car movement. So there's definitely a way where the map is taking that into account, even though the place type map is not delineating what those transportation futures should be.
How are we defining transit in Durham, and is it different than the way the state is defining transit?
For our purposes, transit, anything that we're looking at in terms of public transportation options, whether that's regular, buses in regular traffic, rapid transit bus system, commuter rail, what have you, we're looking at all of that in the proposed transit plan process as that has been going along.
Okay, thank you. And the root of that question is, when we have our the conversations with our county colleagues and regarding regional transit, I think it will be beneficial to be consistent, regionally and locally. And when we think about transit, we're thinking about multimodal and creating vessels that accommodate all. I had another question. Also we have the Vision Zero commitment. And I don't want this plan to be another, we did it and then it sits on the shelf, and action plans and implementation tend to expire with the new administration. So I hope that this plan will give us some, not only consistency, but some longevity. And lastly, I think Councilmember Caballero mentioned this yesterday. I do think that, the conversation around the urban growth boundary, that's going to require a lot more conversation. Because it's easy to say, yes, just bring it in 13 miles. But what happens when you, in the time of needing more supply, we decrease supply or capacity for supply? What does that do over a 30-year period? Because the housing bubble is not going to pop here locally. We are too hot of a market. So I look forward to, just putting some more attention to that. As we adjust our policies to create more density here, I would say to my colleagues, we are going to have to build some relationships across the aisle in this state, with our Republican colleagues and Democratic colleagues at the state level. And we're going to have to get some help, and I don't mind reaching out to have those conversations. Thank you so much, again, for this extensive work. And again, like I said, I look forward to, I think I sent the email already. Okay, yeah, we're going to talk about these districts. I'm looking forward to that. And Mayor Pro Tem, I'll close with this. When I say services accessible to everyone, and I don't want to freak everybody out when I say this, but imagine a health department decentralized, or imagine general services decentralized where they are spread across the city. You can still have the one main big building if you want, but just imagine folks getting more access to those same services, but in their neighborhood. I'm looking forward to that, commercially as well as general services. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Hyman?
Hi, yes, I just want to say thank you because during the process, it said that you basically knew that you needed to do better efforts in terms of engaging young people, Spanish speakers, and also rural residents. And so it also said that you set up focus groups. And I just wanted to see, from that, do you feel that that was inclusive of getting the information that you needed? And again, the other part is basically educating people around this whole comprehensive plan, because a lot of people just don't know what this is and what you're doing, right?
Sure, yeah, so we've had focus groups kind of at many different phases throughout the last 3 years of the project. And I think one of the things we were excited about with our work in the past few months with engagement is particularly around reaching young people and Spanish speakers, working with the Office on Youth and kind of building on their approach to engagement was very successful. In addition, we had an opportunity as rural residents were bringing up concerns. We partnered with 2 different residents to help figure out what's a good place and time to talk about things, and then showed up kind of with that person helping us set up those engagements. So we plan to as we've done throughout this, and I mentioned kind of our iterative process, there's some successes that we want to build on, as well as some things that we know we need to get more information to more residents. So our focus as we're putting out the full draft plan, and especially, sometimes it's hard to get folks involved in something when it's just forming because they don't have anything to react to yet. We know as we get closer to the adoption process, we're gonna have more people saying, hey, I think this about what's in there. And so really getting the information as accessibly as possible to as many different residents in different parts of our city and county as we are doing that final engagement on the full draft plan, that's our focus.
Definitely agree because, again, people will wait till things happen and then, okay, I want to discuss it, but I think they have to be educated, too, about the process.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? Councilmember Freeman?
Just one additional question. Just noting from the memo, I just wanted to know if this ranked order that's listed under the sense of place goals is ranked by some specific, like survey or some mechanism. If
do you mean the policies under this sense of place topic, or? Yeah. We did, as we were trying to put all of the policies together for things that were either bigger picture that we heard more from residents about, try and start with those and then work our way down. They're not in an order of priority at this point. One of the things that we anticipate doing as part of our implementation is figuring out prioritization as we have actions to move forward on these.
Thank you, that's all.
Thank you, Councilmember, and thank you, colleagues. Lisa, again, thank you for such a great presentation. As I said, I've heard progress reports on our comprehensive plan a number of times, and I guess my fervent hope is that future leaders to whom we will bequeath this document will be as enamored by it and committed to it, because it comes down to still votes and decisions by council folk. It's really critically important work. I would, I've said in different contexts that really the ghost of our history really informed this land use process. You look at our nation's history, land, it's really a history of land use. Our development as an economic superpower is largely in part due to westward expansion, which was a land grab, and the way we've been able to move our military or mattresses from one coast to another to project our power. American chattel slavery was linked to land, was bringing folk over to make the land yield its wealth. We talk about Hayti and the glorious past of Black Wall Street. Hayti was not just a concept, it was a zip code. The destruction of Hayti was a land grab. So all of our values and hopes about this plan are informed by the history of this country. Once upon a time, it wasn't just white men who could vote, it was white landowners that could vote. There's a reason why, not far from here, the historic town of Princeville gets flooded all the time, because the land that was given to those freed slaves was lower than the land, other land around it. So time and time again, there are just myriad examples of how our land use policy actually translates into our values and has been a conduit for our values, be they admirable values or even racist values. So this is really important and sacred work that you're doing. There's a reason why there are some families that give their kids keys to homes at their weddings and pass down wealth, and other families leave leases for their children. That's land use. That comes down to land and to dirt. So this is critically important work. I'm really excited about the level of engagement that we're doing and that we will continue to do with our residents and citizens, and let's keep plugging at it. And again, in the final analysis, who's sitting on this dais, and I don't plan on being here I won't be here forever, but future leaders, none of us will, future leaders will embrace the same values that's informing this process. It doesn't have the force of law, but certainly we hope that it'll have the force of our values as we move forward. So thank you so much for this work. And colleagues, also thank you for this important discussion and your great observations and questions. Thank you. Moving on to another very important presentation from our Public Works Department. Item number 19, ST-314C, Pavement Condition Study. You're not Tasha.
Good afternoon. Tasha Johnson, Public Works Assistant.
There you are. Thank you. So he's not Tasha.
No, but he will be presenting. That's Clint Blackburn. He is over the contracting group, and he will be presenting both presentations along with the respective consultants. I just want to do a brief intro. So we are very excited to deliver these presentations to you this afternoon. City of Durham Public Works Department is considered a trendsetter among our peer municipalities for our incorporation of pavement preservation and pavement maintenance over the last few years. We have the largest pavement preservation program in the state for any municipality, and one of the largest in the region. And you will see through the results of the study the impact that has had on the network. In addition to that, we are further considered trendsetters because now we apply an equity lens to how we prioritize that work. We have historically done equity, but it's been very ad hoc. We would look at a map of the need. We would look at the funds we had available and try as best we could to distribute the funds geographically and also to address as many social and economic indicators as possible. Well, now we have a quantifiable way to do that work, and that's what we're going to talk about here today. So you are in very good hands with Clint. I and Director Williams will be available if we are needed for questions, and we look forward to your feedback, your comments, and your support.
Thank you so much, Tasha. Good to see you. Thank you, gentlemen. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for letting us be here. My name is Clint Blackburn. I'm the supervisor of the Contract Management Group and Public Works Engineering Division. This is Scott Gordon with RAS. They are the ones that performed the pavement condition study and helped us develop our 5-year plan. Before we get started, I'd really like to excitedly tell you how great our program is, and we're actually nationally recognized. The National Center for Pavement Technology has come to Durham to look at our pavement program and see how we're applying pavement preservation in an urban environment. And they want to actually take the information they're getting from us and help other government organizations across the nation to apply that in an urban setting. So we're doing some really exciting things here in Durham. So let's go.
Thank you, Clint. Good afternoon, Council. My name is Scott Gordon. I am president of Roadway Asset Services. I'm also a professional engineer, licensed here in the state of North Carolina. It's an honor to get to do work with the city. And as Clint said, I will mirror that comment that you are well respected across the nation. And when I do work across the country from east to west, I think you are very progressive in how you're handling the management of your system. So I wanted to get into a little bit more about what we did with this evaluation and kind of walk you through, starting with some terminology, just to kind of set the baseline. Centerline miles. So when we throw that term around, think of a roadway as a single line on a map. And if we add up those lines, that's your centerline mileage. So you're roughly about 770 centerline miles of roadway that you're managing here in Durham. Paved area, if we look at square yardage, we're over 13.5 million square yards of pavement. That's a lot of material that you're responsible for maintaining. So if we put that into another perspective, we could pave a 2-lane road from Durham to Dallas with that much material. So that's a long way. If we look at the network replacement value, what we're looking at here at over $1 billion asset that you're managing. When I say that number, that represents what it would cost to rebuild every road. That is not the same as what we're going to talk about maintenance for each road, because they're different conditions. But if we were to have to rebuild every road in Durham, that's what type of investment we're looking at. We're going to mention lane mile possibly throughout this. A lane mile is basically what you're driving as a car down the road, 12 feet wide and 5,280 feet in length is a mile. So when we say lane mile, that's what we're referencing. The term pavement condition index, or we'll say PCI, that is an evaluation method that's used nationwide as a standard. It's a score from 0 to 100 to represent the condition of your roadway. We look at the distresses, the severity, and the density of each distress is evaluated to calculate this score. Preservation is a term that we're going to use. It's basically a lightweight maintenance treatment that's cost-effective to apply to extend the service life of a roadway. So often equate it to your house. If you put money into the structure, the timber, the lumber, the siding of your house, you're going to paint that house. Not only look good, but it's going to take on the UV rays and the weathering of the environment to make that last longer. We're doing the same thing for the roadways. We're spending money for base, for asphalt. We're going to seal that from time to time to preserve it, to protect the quality of that material, to prolong the life of that pavement. ASTM 6433 is the standard that we're using. This defines how we calculate the PCI value. So that's a national standard. It's been around for almost 40 years. Most cities will follow this kind of standard. So that's the basis of what we're doing with this study. So another basic is pavement management. What is pavement management really? It's studying the life, deterioration of a roadway. So if you look at that first curve on the far left of this graph, that's how a road's going to deteriorate over time. The blue marks that you see bouncing along there are surface treatments or preservation treatments that are used to prolong the life. The reason we're doing those, if you look at the top of that curve in that orange section, $4 per square yard maintenance applied at that point, if we let it deteriorate down to a poor condition, will cost 6 times that amount. Up to $26, some cases more. We'll show you higher numbers later, to do rehab or maintenance to that roadway. So you can see the value in maintaining with preservation. and extending the service life of that roadway. So that's why we want to study these conditions and understand where you are with your network. This is some of the state-of-the-art equipment that we use to evaluate the roadways. We performed the studies last fall. We use this type of equipment to drive every road within the city. I'm not going to go into detail on it, but it's a lot of imagery with laser measurements, scanning, looking at the texture of the pavement and the surface and determining how we look at the distresses. The other thing of value is that camera up on top. It's a 360 panoramic view. So we've captured every image of your roadway with all your assets, and we can basically pull out information from other right-of-way assets as you need it. So that's information that your staff now has that they can utilize.
And a real quick story about that is after they had collected the data, I was contacted by the Transportation Department asking us if we had the street signs located in our right-of-ways in GIS. We did not. I was able to talk to Scott, increase our scope a little bit, and they were able to go back through that data they captured with the Ladybug camera and geolocate all the street signs within our right-of-way, and now we have that in GIS. So there's other benefits to this data as well.
And you have ownership of that information. So if you need to do that type of thing in the future, you certainly can. We start with your GIS maps, your center lines. We work with your staff to identify which roadways we need to evaluate, and we track that so that we can enter that data back into your database once we've completed everything. The map on the right is kind of, we call it a breadcrumb, but it's showing where all the images were taken as that van drove around all your city streets. So that's the kind of information that we have available to us. So if we look at a quick dashboard of where we are within the network condition, right now we're sitting at about an average PCI of 69. That's considered a healthy environment, a healthy network. I was in another group that performed this study 3 years ago, and we had a similar score. So based on the studies we were doing then, we found that at the current maintenance level, we could maintain. The projections were it's going to start dropping off a little bit if we don't do more. But this does validate that we have been able to maintain after the last few years. So this backlog number that you see there of 179 million, that is basically representative of what maintenance is needed now. If we were to go out and apply maintenance to every road based on the condition and need it's in right now, this is how much money we would need. So don't confuse this to that number I threw out earlier at reconstruction. This is maintenance requirements right now. So if we look at a map to see what the general condition is, you can see the color coding, and I'll show you some more later. It's great graphics to where you can visualize the condition of the roadways, but the chart on the right is kind of your legend to let you know what percentage of your network falls in each category. As you compare what was done in the 2018 study to what we've done recently, you can see that we're generally staying in the same categories. We've had a little bit more movement into the satisfactory. Our fair and poor categories are down a little bit of what they were a few years ago. Our mid-level poor is a little bit less, but we've got a little bit more down in the failed area that we need to reconstruct. But generally, things are tracking pretty close. We're seeing some deterioration, but some increase in movement. So this is just another representation by mileage of how we fall in each of the categories. And then when we get into the various maintenance treatments that are available to the city that your crews have typically used, you've contracted out, we built a table at the bottom to basically understand when would we apply those treatment types. So if you look at the PCI range on the far right of the table, that gives us the range that we'd apply certain maintenance. And as engineering, that's what we look at to determine that PCI range tells us a lot about the condition of the roadway, so we know what kind of maintenance needs to be applied. We've also determined the unit cost for what we would spend per square yard for each of those treatments, and we can apply that to the area of the roadway that needs to be treated to determine a budget. And so that's the exercise that we went through in looking at a budget scenario analysis. If we get into a decision tree, this is kind of basically how we line it out in the software as to when would we treat things, what would we treat it with, and how much is it going to cost us to do that. So if you look at a map of what you've been doing over the last several years, the black lines represent the repaving, the overlays, reconstruction that you guys have done over the last 3 years. And if you compare that to the annual preservation that's been going on, you can see what Clint was mentioning earlier, why you're recognized nationwide as a city that's progressive, being on top of preservation. You spend a lot of money preserving those roads when they're in good condition instead of letting them deteriorate. So this map just kind of illustrates the path that you've been on recently. And I want to bring up a little bit about ADA compliance. It is a federal requirement when you're doing an overlay or a cape seal or some kind of reconstruction that you do address the sidewalks and the ADA. And I know we've got a talk coming up later, a presentation about the sidewalks. But I just wanted you to recognize that does require additional money when you get into there. The funding we're looking at is the construction and engineering on the roadways. But when you get out to do those projects, you do have to do these improvements at the same time. So when we say we need to apply maintenance to a street and pick particular roads to apply maintenance to, how do we pick that? There's a couple different ways of doing it. We can look at a prioritization, which is basically just ordering priority. And you can define the priority however you want. You can say, I want to do worst first, let's do the worst ones first, or we could do the better ones and do preservation. The next step of improvement in that process is an optimization, where we want to optimize and maximize a benefit that we get out of that. So let's say we want to make the PCI average increase over time. So what would we do to treat roads? And it would be a mixture of preservation and reconstruction and rehab to be able to maximize that improvement. That would be an optimization. What we did in this analysis was really a financial optimization. So we're looked at what can we get max benefit of improvement by spending the fewest amount of dollars to get there. So we're looking at some various things that I'll describe here in a little bit of how we evaluate the best way to spend the money. So when we start going into prioritization, some of the things that we can look at is that PCI condition category. So we can use that, like I said, worst first, best first. We can look at traffic. We can look at what roads carry higher volumes of traffic, what's more important to the commerce, emergency use of the roadway in the city. We can look at pavement type. You have a lot of asphalt pavements. Those deteriorate faster than concrete, so we usually have a little bit higher priority on maintaining those. You can look once again at the high commerce, the geographics, where are the tourist areas, where are the schools, where are the emergency response units located, what roads lead to those, where do we need to maintain those. And then we can put the equity lens that we talked about just a little bit, where we look at the local demographics of annual household income and those type of things to make sure that we really kind of use that as a tiebreaker when we're deciding on when to apply a treatment of a same type of roadway. So when we get into the optimization of what we did here, so the financial efficacy we had here is this condition index. So we put about a 70% weight on that. So we use that from an engineering standpoint to govern, because things are going to deteriorate. We're putting loads on these roads, so we need to study the structure. That needs to be the main guide of what deteriorates, when we need to treat it. But we also want to look at the traffic classification. This is going to carry a heavier weight on our arterials and collectors versus maybe the residential streets. And then once again, we want to apply that equity lens as a tiebreaker. So if I've got multiple residential streets in the same condition, and they all need the same type of treatment, this is going to slant our priority towards some of the poorer neighborhoods, lower income areas, so that they're not ignored and that they're treated, and we're treating the roadways from an equity fairness in the city. So when I talked about the financial optimization, really what we're doing is looking at where the cost of deferral hits us hardest. So to describe that, we've got the categories of condition of roadway. There's a cost to each one of those. If we defer a road that is about to fall into a lower category, that cost of deferral is the additional money that's going to be needed now that we've let it fall to a worse condition. So the example I've put up here in this road picture, the one on the left is a PCI 64. The rehab we would do right now would be a cape seal, costing us a little over $10 a square yard. If I wait another 2 or 3 years, that road is going to deteriorate below 60 and fall into this next rehab category that's now going to cost me $38 a square yard to go do the rehab needed. So that cost of deferral is over $27 a yard. So you can see the priority is catch those roads that are at the lower end of these ranges and treat them before they fall into the next category and cost us a lot more money. So in comparison, if we want to look at a residential neighborhood, and let's say it's average about a 58, so it's at the high end of that category. You may have people saying this road's in bad shape and it needs to be, rehab. True. But if you've got other roads that are at a 25, and if I don't treat those, they deteriorate even to an $80 a square yard reconstruction, my priority needs to be on those high 20s to get those fixed first. Then we'll come back and get to 55. So that's how we layer that priority to optimize spending money. We want to be smart in where we're spending the money, get the ones that are critical first, and then go back, because that 55 neighborhood, it's really not going to cost us any more if we have to defer it 2 or 3 years. Ideally, yes, we'd like to get it all done immediately, but we've got to finance and look at the money and how we spend it best. So walking through some of the models we built here, I'm going to show you some maps, and that's a $20 million budget basically of construction cost. When we go to the next one at 15 million, you're going to see less streets light up. You go down to the 10 million budget, you still see fewer streets, and you go down to a 6 million, and these are annual budgets, by the way. You'll see that. And I'm going to go backwards. And if you watch the map, you'll see from a 6 million back up to the 10 million, the 15, and the 20. You see how many more streets get treated with that additional funding. And not only is that staying ahead of our budget, but that's perception of the residents, of seeing the city being out there proactive treating streets. So I'm going to briefly go through these 4 scenarios that we built, okay? So we started with a $6 million budget, which is the paving cost, but when you factor in the consulting, the designing, the management of the project, it really is more of an $8.5 million scenario that we're looking at here. If we were to apply that annually, we're going to see a deterioration in the pavement condition index of the overall network over time, over the next 10 years. You're going to see that decline. You can look at some of the graphs. The one thing I'll point your attention to, the one on the lower right shows mileage of treatments, how many miles we can treat. We're averaging about 20 across the next 10 years. 20 miles is all we're going to be able to treat with this kind of budget. And you can see kind of the breakdown on the left of the different types of treatment we apply. If we go to the next level at a $12.5 million budget annually, we can finally maintain the PCI after 10 years. You're going to see a slight decrease there in the middle, but by the end of 10 years, we're going to be back to where we are right now. So it's maintained. We're going to be able to stay the status. If you look in that lower right chart, you'll see the mileage. We're now inching up above 30, approaching 40 in most years as an average of miles that we're able to treat. So we're almost doubling how many streets we can effectively treat. The treatments, you start seeing a little bit more rehab in there with the blues. We're seeing some more preservation come online with this scenario. When we go up to a $19 million scenario, finally, we see after 10 years, we're improving the PCI. You see it fairly standard for the next 3 or 4 years, status quo, and then we start seeing an increase at that point. If you go the lower right and look at the miles we're treating, now we're getting up above 40, close to 50 miles in most years that we're effectively treating. You'll see the rehab in the blue lines and above are starting to increase. We're starting to effectively take care of damaged roads and take care of those with this budget. Now, at $25 million budget, we really do see an increase up to about 90 after 10 years. Now, this would be the ultimate of what we would anticipate. You're not going to get your PCI average up above 90 very effectively because you can't treat that many roads at once. When you look at the mileage, we are starting to get close to 100 miles a year that we're able to seal. And if you look at the color coding, a lot of that is preservation sealing. So it's really putting a seal down to protect some of the better roads. And you can see the breakdown there of what we're actually treating. So when we summarize that with these 4 scenarios, you can kind of see the various colorative lines. Really, your $12.5 million is what you should be looking at minimum just to maintain. Your $19 million is what you're really looking at to try to get an improvement annually. So one thing I think Clint noted to me was in some of the residential surveys, the street condition was one of the highest priority items that everybody was listing.
That's true. Yeah.
Summarize that correct?
Yeah.
Then if you look at the last chart I have for you here, based on the modeling that we built, we created this red line, which basically allows you to look at it quickly and say, based on an annual construction budget, what would my PCI average be after 10 years? So can you look at some various layers? I do want to point out this is only considering the construction cost. We still have planning, engineering, inspection cost on top of that. And then I've got a note over on the right about the network growth. Every time you take on more streets and your city is growing, that's adding to your maintenance budget, okay? So I've got some numbers over there breaking that down. If we assume 1.6 annual growth, we're going to look at probably 172,000 more needed each year just to maintain. That's not to even build them, but that's if you even take on roads from NCDOT. And these costs also do not include the PROAC, okay? With that, I will end the presentation and answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much for excellent information-filled presentation. Colleagues, I'm going to now entertain any questions or comments from you. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. I appreciate the presentation and the study, and I really want to just take a moment and say thank you, Ms. Johnson, for continuing to give us the education we need around this, because this is not the layman's kind of space, but I feel like I understood a lot of what you said. I do know that the work when I began, I know we were at a D, but I think we were closer to 60. And to see us at 69, I'm trying to get to the 80. And I would like to know if by chance, any of this road work that you're studying has been split out by state road versus city.
Well, you want to answer that?
Yeah, we don't maintain the state roads, so that wasn't included in the study at all.
All of this is just city roads?
This is just the roads that we maintain, are owned by the city of Durham.
Thank you. That was all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Williams.
I didn't know that this was just city. I thought we have a lot of roads. Wow. And I just drove to Dallas, so that is a lot.
Long way, isn't it?
Wow. Okay. Well, I have questions. This is my first time going through this presentation, so I have probably more general questions around education. So when you're doing paving, is it just paving, or do you provide striping services as well?
You want to?
Like, do you? I guess if we were to restripe a road a different way.
Yeah, we actually, that's included. Anytime we resurface a road, we let the transportation department know, and they will evaluate it and see how it fits their overall plan. And a lot of times they will send us a new striping plan, and we will, and when we go to restripe the road, we will stripe it based on the new striping plan we receive from the transportation department.
Awesome.
That's really, anything, we'll do, whatever they direct us to do.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you. What's the timeline for paving or restoring? I guess restoring would be based on the PCI, but what's the timeline to do maybe a mile?
Like how long does the construction cost? Depends on the treatment.
How long does the construction take?
Yeah, so for a mile, it depends on the treatment. Microsurfacing, which is one of our main primary preservation treatments that we do, that can happen. They're usually in and out of a neighborhood within a couple, like a week and a half. It depends on the size of the neighborhood, but they could be in and out of a neighborhood within like a week and a half, 2 weeks, depending on the size. There's a lot of steps that involve. They have to come back and sweep and come back and do stripe and do, so it's a multi-treatment process. Now for repaving, it can take a solid 2 weeks or longer, because, and they have to, once again, it's a process. So they'll come in and mill and put the first lift down, and then come back later and put in the second lift. So there's several steps that go into that, and it can take, upwards to a month, depending on how big it is and how much work they have in the staging, because there's different crews doing different things.
Gotcha. Okay. And colleagues, so when it comes to repaving, well, you guys know this. When it comes to repaving, so what, I guess, do we set those priorities of when a road gets repaved?
Yes, sir. Yeah,
Okay.
that's our department that does that.
Okay, gotcha. So asphalt is really expensive.
Yes, sir.
Are there any alternatives?
Any alternatives to asphalt?
Yeah. This is just
preservation.
curiosity.
That's the whole reason we're doing preservation is because that's the alternate. We know the underlying surface is asphalt, but a typical road, if you do nothing, is a 20-year life cycle. So what we're trying to do is extend that through preservation and through this program. We're trying for a 40-year life cycle or even more. Our goal is a 40-year life cycle, so we're trying to double that. We're hopeful that it might even go longer than that, but that's what we're shooting for. So, as far as a better surface, asphalt is, there's a huge debate between the concrete community and the asphalt community about what is the best. For us, for what we do, asphalt, I don't want to get into the debate here, but for us, asphalt is working for us. But the alternate material is the preservation, the micro, the Cape Seal, things of those natures.
Gotcha. And last question, do you see the PCI conditions worse in any one concentrated area of the city than others?
Make sure that man. Go ahead.
No, it's pretty even across demographics, across. No, it's all in Ward 1. We have so we published our PCI data. It's live on the web, and you can go and look and compare that to the demographics. There it is on your screen. You can see it's multi-rainbow all over the entire the city. So there's not one area where we're applying equity to this. So we're trying to do a balanced approach across the entire city. So
I appreciate that. This is pretty dense information. I think the way you presented it makes it easier to explain. So I'll probably dig more into it on my own just to understand the timeline, the cost, and because we have some residents, when they look at their road in front of their house every day, they're like, you guys are just forgetting about us. Mm-hmm. We need to be able to explain clearly that process and why we haven't gotten over there yet. And part of being elected officials is the facilitators of information. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? Councilmember Freeman.
I will just state for Councilmember Williams, just acknowledging that I think about 10, 15 years ago, the city was really rammed about how many potholes and how many roads were really horrible. And so we've worked really hard to get it up to a standard because, you realize that those who are at the margins, when they have to replace their tires and over again and all of that, and so this has been an ongoing issue.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. Appreciate the presentation. It was really useful and helpful information. I also want to just highlight that I also appreciated what staff shared in the memo around the increase. Right now we're funding about $10 million, and we will be dealing with this in our next budget season. So I look forward to what staff will be bringing us.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? Gentlemen, thank you for a really excellent presentation. I had maybe two, possibly three questions. I wanted to put some of the numbers in context. The slide with network average condition results, we've got a pavement average condition of 69. That number, the backlog number, 179,214,054. And I want to understand this in context to the budget numbers. So if we were to stroke that check, hypothetically, at one time, that would bring our PCI to
Theoretically, you could say 100. It's really probably more 90, 95. I mean, it's going to get into some engineering explanation, but you can do treatments like preservation and seals. The distress is still within the structure.
All right.
So unless you're totally rebuilding, you're just covering it up. So on the surface, it will look new.
Right.
But it's going to deteriorate quicker because there is built-in distress that you've just covered up, if that makes sense.
It does, but I mean, the fact that the number is there, so relative to the budgetary menu items, options, if we were to, say, bring our PCI to that number, which of those corresponding budget proposals would be the one to keep them at, or is that not even on that menu?
To maintain it?
Yeah.
So, well, let me define real quick. The 179 million that we're showing here, that's if we took every road based on its existing condition and said it needs a treatment, whether it's a preservation, rehab, reconstruction. That is adding up all that cost. Okay, so if, yeah, you had a magic checkbook and this year, and we had an outstanding engineering that could do 50,000 projects, you could go do it all at once. That's what it would cost. Now, go back and think of, what was it, 177 centerline miles? In most of those scenarios, we're treating 20, 40, 50 a year. So you can see the difference in the number of the amount of projects that we would have to do to get to that number. Now, I think what you're asking is, what would the annual budget need to be to maintain? The minimum is that 12.5 that we presented. To improve, I heard one councilman said their goal is to improve up to 80, would be closer to that 19 million that we were looking at in that scenario.
Okay.
Is that what you were hearing?
Yeah. Yeah, I just didn't, I don't know if the slide was for entertainment purposes or, but we've got an 8 million scenario, 12 million scenario, 19 million scenario, 25 million scenario. I'm assuming that if we were to spend that 179 million, we'd need a corresponding budget yearly after that to maintain it.
The job's never over.
Well, yeah, hence the budget yearly.
If you were to spend all that money at once and get them all in the same condition, they're all going to start deteriorating immediately.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, you're not solving anything by saying you're not going to spend any after that.
No, that's my point. You've given us several budget options, yearly budget options. Which one of those would correspond to maintaining our roads after we spent the 179 million?
Oh, okay.
That'd be it's probably, it's close to the $12.5 million scenario. That's the one that maintains. Now, once you get up to those higher levels, what it takes to maintain that is probably going to fluctuate based on the continued condition, but it's going to be around the $12 million mark.
Okay. Thanks for that.
And you can, you can really just, pick the PCI that you're shooting for, and when you hit it, then you can change your budget based on what's going to maintain it.
Thanks for that. And with respect to the priority slide, and I think it's important that we're careful how we frame this. The equity lens, I'm not certain is meant to be a tiebreaker more so than a guiding principle for us. Some of the rubric or the metrics that we use, to get to a tie, high traffic areas, tourist areas, whatever, we know that historically some of those areas are precisely tourist areas and high traffic areas because of historic disinvestment or very targeted investment. That's how those neighborhoods got that way. And now the scandal of it is, and the whole equity thing is, the areas that now have become high priority, it looks very, natural and organic. Oh, well, but there's a reason why those areas are those areas to begin with. So sometimes we may have to make a decision realizing the historical reason why that area, and rather than call it a tie, implying that they both started on equal footing, we may have to make some decisions. And I think one of my colleagues asked about pavement conditions. We'll probably see more of this in sidewalks when we get to the actual sidewalk conditions around the city and disparities in that. But I was glad to hear that the pavement is kind of dispersed. Well, not glad, but relieved to hear that it's dispersed throughout the city. But yeah, I do want to just put a caveat there that our equity lens will not just be reserved for tie breaking. It may actually tip the scale because we realize the historical reasons why some of these neighborhoods are high priority to begin with, which may be unbeknownst to us now. We're all acting in good faith now, but when you look at the way things have trended, that's why we are where we are. But excellent presentation. I never get bored about hearing about PCI. I remember when the light went on when I finally figured out what it meant. So thank you so much. And colleagues, thank you for your excellent comments and questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Final presentation under Public Works Department is item number 20, SW77 Sidewalk Asset Management Plan. All right.
Good afternoon, Council.
Oh, Councilman Freeman, you had a
I just
question?
wanted to touch base because I'm sorry, I wasn't clear if, I wanted to just double check because I'm not sure, but I do believe that the 80 number that I'm saying is what was suggested, somewhere around 77 to 80 for us to get to that 12.5 number. And I just want to make sure I'm on the right track and I'm remembering right. I've been looking, trying to find the notes. I could not do that.
Good afternoon again, Tasha Johnson, Public Works Assistant Director. That was the target that we were looking at a few years ago, somewhere between 75 and 80. I think that's the target from our performance standards.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Thank you.
Once again, good afternoon, Council. Thank you for letting us be here. My name is Clint Blackburn. I'm the supervisor of the Contract Management Group in Public Works Engineering Division. This is Aaron Hester with Precision Safe Sidewalks. They're the group that performed the condition study. And we're really excited to present to you the results of the condition study and our sidewalk asset management program. And just real quick, how we got here was prior to this, we were using the service request to identify areas to repair a sidewalk. We found through that primarily service requests were being submitted by higher income neighborhoods, and that equity wasn't applied through that, so we were having to backdoor equity by searching for other areas of the city and equally apply that money. And we realized that was a reactive way of doing that, and we're looking for a proactive way, and that's where we're at today, is moving into this. So I'll turn it over to Aaron for the presentation.
Hello, Aaron Hester, Precision Safe Sidewalks. I'm a senior VP there and based out of Charlotte, North Carolina. Council, mayor, city management, staff, I appreciate the opportunity to present the results of the sidewalk condition study and asset management plan. As an introduction, the city of Durham maintains and has a responsibility to maintain 639 miles of sidewalk, and that provides a mode of transportation for over 285,000 population in the city limits. And that supports an increasing population and network that's increasing at a rate of about 1.6% per year. So some of the planned goals of this project included a very robust citywide engagement process. There was a complete condition assessment of not only the sidewalks, but the curb ramps in the network. Our task was to identify all the deficiencies and take those deficiencies and develop a sidewalk asset management plan. This plan was unique in that it was risk-based and data-driven, and it also had a risk-based equity lens applied to it that could be weighted as part of the model prioritization. And finally, the results of all of that, along with the prioritization, it allowed staff and the city to set annual budget for accessibility improvements. Go back here. So the engagement process, it included engagement efforts across the entire city through internal and external stakeholder groups. It included feedback from 50% people of color, 50% white only. It included households with disabilities and those without. It was across all income levels and citywide. Overall, the sidewalk conditions and all respondents through this engagement effort reported high levels of dissatisfaction. If you look at the map on the right, it's a heat map. It shows the intensity of dissatisfaction. It wasn't one particular group, it was all groups. They were very consistent. The city as a whole, through all those groups, is very dissatisfied with the condition, and that's what we found. So in summary, there were some key takeaways that we thought were noteworthy as part of this process that were incorporated into the plan and also part of the implementation portion. Over 80% of Durham residents use the sidewalks at least weekly. That's very high use. And more than 57% reported some level of dissatisfaction with the condition of city sidewalks. People of color were slightly elevated at 85%, some level of dissatisfaction. And this fourth bullet was noteworthy as well. More than 85% of all respondents to the survey efforts in the engagement process, they reported frequently walking in the street to avoid sidewalk issues, hence the focus on Vision Zero program. Overall, so in summary, dissatisfaction levels are fairly consistent across all population groups and income levels. So the assessment itself, after the engagement process, the scope, again, included 639 miles. We collected over 100,000 data points, 50+ sidewalk attributes, and we evaluated every curb ramp to a ProWAG guideline. And in addition to that, we also included certain equity components and proximity elements that we needed to utilize to incorporate into the plan for costing. And last but not least, all of this information is loaded into ArcGIS systems and integrated with the city platforms, so it can be easily dissected and understood as the plan is implemented. So curb ramps. The net result of the curb ramp analysis, 79% of the curb ramps in the city limits are deficient, non-compliant with some level of ProWAG guidelines. We used a checklist to assess these. They do not meet some requirement in those guidelines in that checklist. Just to give you an idea, that deficiency count, there's over 10,000 curb ramps that fall into this category, and it covers a square footage of 1.1 million square feet. And to replace all of these curb ramp locations, the plan estimated that it's almost $56 million, and that was at time of completion of the plan. So a second set of the assessment focused just on the sidewalks. Those are the connective sidewalks in between the curb ramps. And so we identified, our team identified over 64,000 deficiencies on that sidewalk network. And this is a contiguous network that doesn't address anything that is not contiguous. So in the summary table at the right, for those 64,000 conditions that were identified, it encompasses over 2.3 million square feet of sidewalk that is deficient to some degree. And incorporating the use of alternative maintenance activities in repairing or replacing those sidewalks, the cost to bring those up to compliance is approaching $21 million. There was a section of tasking that included non-sidewalk conditions. We identified over 17,000 conditions that impact the sidewalk right-of-way somehow that would have to be factored into redesign or replacement efforts and impacted costing. For example, utility poles, trees, footpaths, exposed utilities are some examples. So again, there's over 17,000 of those that are located, that are incorporated into the implementation plan. So after we've collected all of this data, the major lift was working with staff and our team to really develop a plan that was risk-based. It needed to be proactive. It needed to prioritize and give us the ability to establish levels of risk to total populations in the city. So we determined risk, simply speaking, risk was a number of deficiencies per mile per population. So that was the first example of development of the model. So this model and this sidewalk asset management plan, it really evolved from the reactive approach that Clint spoke about, and we've developed a proactive approach that is risk-based. The second component of this on the right side of the graphic, we were tasked with applying an equity lens. So for this particular project, the equity groups that were selected by internal and external stakeholders that were important for accessibility issues and this network, those equity groups, we determined a risk based on deficiencies just for those equity groups. So that's the second ring that you'll see in this graphic. And then, so we determined risk to just those groups, not the total population. For example, homes without vehicles or low income that they can't afford a vehicle. We determined risk levels just for those equity groups and incorporated that into a model uniformly. So those groups' risk could determine the prioritization. And then last but not least, the plan and modeling, it incorporated the use of weighting that would incorporate historical spend rates, historical inequities, whether they were intended or not, and those could be weighted to tweak the plan to make adjustments, final adjustments to the prioritization. So that model was built. So from this risk-based approach, this map on the right, the darker the zone, the higher deficiencies per mile. The lighter the zone, the fewer deficiencies. And the darker the zone, that's higher risk to the population in that zone overall equity groups. So this plan, the first part of the model, it allowed us to prioritize based on just risk. And this map is organized by census zones. There's 63 in Durham. They're static for the most part, about 98% static. They don't change very much over time, so this model can be updated with new equity-related data as it becomes available. So this is the risk-based map and the prioritization just based on risk alone to total population. Then we added the equity lens. Well, the prioritization and the risk to those groups, equity groups, changed the prioritization as that's overlaid on top of total risk. So it ensures that we're equitably spending and considering risk to those groups, and it updates the prioritization. So the last portion of the model related to equity groups, the model can be weighted. You can weight how much risk you want the plan to tailor to. You can adjust for different equity groups that are included in the plan based on, like I said, past spends or past and equitable distribution of funding. So overall, the final plan, this is really the net of the prioritization. The left side of each one of these graphics shows a risk-based only prioritization over all populations. And as you slide the slider to the left, you'll notice that the coloring down the middle of the screen and the intensity of the coloring changes, so the prioritization changes. For example, on the graphic on the right, the topmost zone, it got darker. The zone below it got slightly lighter, indicating slight changes in prioritization when the equity lens was applied. And that's really what we wanted to show here. So a close-up, let's zoom in on just one zone. Everyone is familiar with Old East Durham. The zone 1002 is the one we'll focus on, and the slider graphic on the right shows risk base on the left and applying the equity lens on the right, how the prioritization changed slightly. So traditional prioritization methods, just on risk, based on deficiency to the population as a whole, this zone would rank 16th in the prioritization. When you apply the equity lens, it ranked 11th. And the reason is it included equity-based analysis in the process. So data plus history really helps create action on the plan. Just a little bit of information about this zone. There were over 1,400 total sidewalk deficiencies on almost 9 sidewalk miles. That's 159 deficiencies a mile. That's pretty consistent with the overall city of Durham, which pretty much has a deficiency about every 50 feet, if you calculate the numbers. The equity portion of this, for example, it ranked the 24th highest for people of color, 11th for over 65, 35th for no-car households, so on and so forth for each one of the equity groups in the analysis and the model. Here's the net of the whole plan. Repair costs. What is it going to cost to fix the sidewalks and curbs overall? So $76.8 million is the plan produced total cost to bring everything up into compliance at the end of this study. And one note on that, that includes the incorporation of alternative maintenance strategies identified with staff that could be utilized versus complete redesign and replacement. So this is incorporating alternative maintenance activity use. So sidewalks, it's about 21 million. Curb, it's about 56 million. So the 10-year plan, you'll notice the 9.65 million, that is over a 10-year plan more than the 76 million. Well, the 9.65 million would represent if you did not use any alternative maintenance activities in the process, if you just replaced and redesigned everything. So by using alternative maintenance activities, you're saving about $2 million per year on a 10-year plan. So last note, this includes no calculations for growth, no new defects over the time of the 10-year plan, or increasing costs of construction. So just wanted to note that. And lastly, I did want to thank a diverse group of partners that we partnered with to produce this condition study and plan. Idealisms, Planning Communities, Bree & Associates, and Precision Infrastructure Management work with us very closely. And we also appreciate staff and all their contributions as well. And happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much for excellent presentation. Colleagues, floor is open. I'll recognize any colleagues that have any questions or comments. Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. I really appreciate you sharing the insight around the equity aspect. I mean, I really think it shows how when we apply, just a little bit more to the process, you can actually shift the system to actually address the issue that we know exists. And so that, the data plus history equals action is really powerful. And I really want to thank you for taking the extra steps to make sure to incorporate that in the presentation. And then also acknowledging your partners. So my screen just froze. I saw Idealism and partner.
Idealism.
And Bree & Associates.
Planning Communities, Bree &
Planning
Associates.
Communities and Bree & Associates. And I know those are folks who have a very community-driven focus, and I appreciate their work in this as well. I want to thank our staff for going the extra mile as well and making sure that we do have these areas addressed as they've been concerns over the years. I'm frozen right now. It's really messing me up. I'm sorry. But I'll yield for right now.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Hyman.
I also want to say thank you for a very detailed presentation, and my eyes are still glaring with these numbers in terms of how much, because you just don't really equate that amount of money for something like this. But I just wanted to ask in terms of why didn't you actually also add in the projection for growth and maybe extended costs, just was wondering.
Yeah, at the point that we finished the modeling, those variables, they're pretty dynamic. And really to present something to council, we wanted to make sure that we had accurate data to base that on. Sidewalks, the variables that impact sidewalks over time are quite different than the asphalt side. There's more. It's not as finite as the asphalt side. Scott may argue with me, but there's a lot more variables. So I think understanding those and the impact over time, we needed just a little bit more data. It's something we can add to the model, though.
Thank you. And also, I appreciate the equity lens, too. Thank you so much.
Councilmember Williams.
What's your name again?
Aaron Hester.
Aaron Hester. I got to say, this is not your fault, but after watching that presentation, I thought, I don't like this guy. I'm just teasing you. I was like, wow, I didn't know it was this bad. This is wow. And I'm new to council, so a lot of this is my first time seeing, and you know, like Councilmember Hyman, you just don't really factor the cost with all of these things. And I'm sitting here with anxiety, like, how are we going to pay for this? And it is so needed. And, you know, and sometimes you were able to smile while you were doing your presentation. Why is he smiling? This is expensive. But I appreciate, you know, lightening it up a little bit. You know, this is, you know, I appreciate the detail in the presentation. Without, you know, taxing everyone so bad that they pack up and leave town, this is going to take some serious dialogue to figure out how we're going to address it, you know, especially cost-wise. Question, what is cheaper, concrete or asphalt?
Depends on the application and how deep it is.
Gotcha. Okay. You probably know where I'm going with it, but I refuse to, I won't, you know, a camel is a horse designed by a committee. I won't do committee work in here, but I'm thinking about this cost and already thinking about, okay, how can we better respond to this?
So for a sidewalk, concrete's, you know, your best bet because of the, because how thick it is and the movement of the ground around it and trees, and you want the hard surface. For a road, concrete costs a whole lot more per mile than asphalt does. Costs considerably more. It can last longer if it's installed perfectly correct. The problem we have in Durham is we are in a Triassic basin, which means we got a lot of clay. So it doesn't work well with concrete all the time. So it takes a lot of money to prepare the ground properly for concrete. And that's why typically in Durham, we've always relied on asphalt because asphalt is flexible. So, you know, concrete's not flexible. So when the ground moves, asphalt can roll with it and get back to straight, whereas concrete's just going to break and create something you're just going to have to replace. And as you know, and replacing concrete is extremely expensive.
So wouldn't it make sense to widen the right-of-way and just place barriers and have, like, you know, sidewalks as asphalt as well, and place barriers from the road, the car usage?
Well, then, you know, you get into, you know, streetscapes, you get into trees, you know, the green space, you know, that's a, you know, that is a possibility, you know, but right now the cross-section that we have has it, whereas the sidewalks. So that would be a whole, you know, different direction. You could go that way, but it changes the landscape of the road. And I'm not going to get into the planning.
Right. No, my colleagues are smarter than I am on this. I'll spend some time talking to them about it, and just kind of digging their brain about it. There was one other question. It may come back. I'll probably reach out and just kind of learn a little more about this, but I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Caballero.
Thank you. That was an excellent presentation, a lot of really good information, hard information, and I will go ahead and say, you know, we have upped our CIP already. We have talked about an infrastructure bond, and looking at these last two presentations, I just want to put on the record that we really are going to have to consider doing a bond and putting that in front of the voters so that they because we're hearing from them that they're dissatisfied and ultimately they have to pay with it pay for that with their taxes. And so I just want to bring it forward. We are a long way from budget season, luckily, and I do want to just share with staff that that is one of my intentions is to ask my colleagues that it's time, and we have a lot of big deficits in infrastructure, and we've got to figure out how to climb out of it, and I don't see it happening with our current fiscal picture. Thank you.
Colleagues, anyone else? Are you seeking? Go ahead, Councilmember Freeman.
Thank you. My one question mainly, and I appreciate Councilmember Caballero bringing infrastructure and equity, or equity and infrastructure, that we bond information back up as well. I do want to just ask, where you're addressing the tree concerns, is that just at the root? And who is exactly, I guess coming to that, or who exactly does address it, where the trees are kind of growing up?
Yeah, so it's primarily a root issue where the roots are pushing up on the sidewalk and creating a trip hazard. When we run across those situations, we engage General Services, our arborists, tree arborists. They will come out and evaluate the tree when we're doing a repair. And if the tree is diseased, we will go ahead and remove the tree. If it is not diseased and the arborist deems that it should stay, then we will work around the tree the best we can and make it as accessible as we can and keep the tree in place.
And just to follow up, is the arborist on your side, or is it on the?
It's the city arborist through the General Services Department.
Thank you. That was all.
Thank you, Councilmember. Colleagues, anyone else? Councilmember Hyman.
Sir, I have one more question, and this may be a really, I guess, naive question, but in terms of like research, is there any other research going on in terms of like maybe some new like set of concrete, or what is it, asphalt, like some other things in the working that could be a little bit, I don't know, just a little cheaper? I don't know. I'm just asking.
Yes, there are some alternate materials that they have, that the industry has tried. I know City of Charlotte has gone to, it's a rubberized sidewalk. They're inherently unstable, and City of Charlotte has deemed not to use those. We haven't tried, we haven't really tried any alternate methods in Durham yet. We're always looking at new technologies, but so far with sidewalks, concrete is still considered the best material.
Okay, I'm gonna need you guys to figure out how to find, get this new stuff. I mean, because I'm just curious to the fact that, we're in this whole modern technology era, and that I can't believe that anybody else hasn't come up with some other things that they could use, but yeah. Thank you for that, because I didn't even think about rubber, which obviously is not working, but thank you.
They are fun to walk on because they're nice and cushy, but they do move quite a bit and become quickly not accessible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, anyone else? Well, gentlemen, thank you so much for a really excellent presentation. We have and we do spend a lot of money on sidewalks and roads annually in Durham, and we actually, although I've had back and forth with some folk about a de facto line item coming out of our reserve fund each year that we take to supplement what we do with streets and roads. That's another discussion. I do want to say, this is an example of values becoming policy. The people of this city and leaders going a couple of generations back insisted that we do equity. That was a very organically mandated posture for our city that started with our people and leadership, and it is deeply gratifying. The headline that comes out of this presentation, if I can be presumptuous, is that the government was going to do something, we applied a different lens, and we're doing something different. That's a headline. That the fact that the list, our priority list, actually changed, because equity oftentimes gets relegated to just a lot of conversation and speeches around the country and municipalities around the country. But when it comes time to actually start spending money or changing priorities, that's where it gets a little hairy. But here in Durham, we're doing it. I'm part of the executive leadership apparatus of the North Carolina League of Municipalities, and one of the most gratifying moments I've had with the league is when elected colleagues from all over the state said, hey, can you come talk to us about how you're doing equity in Durham? And this very presentation, this very example, our staff came and spoke to members of the North Carolina League to talk about how we've changed our priorities with dollars. We're actually going to do some things out of order when it comes to sidewalks, which was deeply, deeply gratifying. We've got a long way to go, but we're doing it. Durham has been celebrated. Durham is leading, and I want to be very clear to not only those in the chamber, but those who are watching. Durham is leading in this area. Even though we've got a lot more work to do, our colleagues are looking to us around this state and around this country to what we're doing here, and this is one of the concrete examples of how equity is informing and recontouring and reconfiguring policy. So my congratulations first to the people of Durham and to the leadership and to this staff whose work oftentimes goes unheralded and unrecognized, but who took the ball and really just made it happen, who literally took a concept, vapor, and put meat on the bones and created policies that are now yielding this type of stuff that we're getting recognition from around the state and around the country. So excellent presentation. We'll keep, Councilmember Caballero, I agree with you. It's going to be a heavy lift. We spend a lot of money. We're going to have to spend a lot more moving forward. But if there were ever such thing as a good start, Durham is off to a good start, I think, in this area. And brief victory lap, and then we got to get back to work to do more. So thank you so much for an excellent presentation. Colleagues, thank you for your excellent questions and comments. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you for your time this afternoon.
All right, colleagues, moving right along. I'm going to move now to our supplemental item, the resolution supporting safe and protective measures to foster healthy learning environments in Durham schools. And I'm going to yield to Councilmember Hyman for any words she may have on this item.
Hi, thank you, colleagues, and thank you for taking the time to actually listen to the resolution in terms of trying to get this to be passed. This is my first resolution, and again, it's supporting safe and protective measures to foster healthy and learning environments in Durham schools. While I do know that the Durham Public School Board of Education is the oversight and overseer of this, I just felt it was very important for us as City Council to also highlight the importance of making sure that updated policies and procedures are in place for our kids going back to school. We've got the year-round schools that have already started in July. I think it was July 18th. And August 29th, we'll have our kids going back. Our kids going back to school. And so I'm calling on this to be in the forefront. I think a lot of times we do a lot of things, not us, but just the society in general, are more reactive than proactive. And so I just wanted us as a city council to support the entities that are going to be updating these policies and procedures around safety around schools. So I wanted to just thank you.
Council member, on behalf of a grateful city, thank you for your excellent work and leadership on this. Imagine the matter will be on our administrative consent for next Monday night meeting. I had a couple notes I'll send to you, nothing substantive, just a couple of wordsmithing things on the resolution that I'll send to you offline. But thank you for your leadership on this, and congratulations on your first resolution. Hear, hear.
Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely, excellent work. Madam Clerk, do you have a report for us?
Yes, I do. Okay, it's not very long. And
Have at it.
there are two committees that you've nominated individuals for. The first one is the Durham Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission. The quest was to appoint residents to fill 4 vacancies on the commission, with 1 representing transportation planning policy and 3 representing at-large residents. The transportation planning policy nomination is Denise Adamir. She's reapplying. And for the at-large position, you could choose up to 3. We have conclusive nominations on Landon C. Baucom and Ryan Phillips, and we have 3 votes for Brian T. Hawkins. Councilmember Caballero and Halsey Hyman have only voted once. So if one of you would like, okay. All right, so that would be our 3rd position. So all of the vacancies have been nominated. The Durham Historic Preservation Commission appointments to appoint a resident to fill 1 vacancy on the Durham Historic Preservation Commission representing at-large member historian. The at-large member historian nomination goes to April M. Johnson. She's also reapplying. And the reappointment to the same committee is going to Rakeem U. Chambers. And that is the end of my report.
Thank you very much, Madam Clerk.
You're welcome.
Colleagues, I believe we're ready to settle the agenda. If no other matters, I'm going to yield to Manager Chadwell to settle the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Pro Tem. For council's next action agenda, we have the following. For consent, items 1 through 17 and item 27. For GBA public hearing, we have items 21, 22, and 23.
Thank you, sir, and thanks to you as well for ably sitting in the hot seat today for Manager Page. Councilor Lamar, thank you so much also for representing our very able city attorney's office and Councilor Rayberg in her absence today. Madam Clerk, were you seeking recognition? To set.
Yeah, motion to settle.
Yeah. Colleagues, at this time, I'm going to entertain a motion to settle the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
I heard a motion and a second properly formatted. All those in favor will indicate by raising your left hand. All right, it appears unanimous to me. The agenda is settled. With no other matters coming before us, colleagues, a very excellent meeting. Thank you for your time today. Madam Clerk, please be advised that it is 3:29. Gavel is down at 3:29. May God bless Durham. We're adjourned.
I'm so nervous. I think she'll go.